We were both lonely, but neither of us knew we were searching for the same place home. My name is Jessica, and for the longest time, I misunderstood loneliness. I thought loneliness looked like empty rooms and unanswered calls. I thought it meant tears falling in the dark, nights spent wishing for someone who never came. But my loneliness didn't look like that at all. It hid itself well. It dressed up as independence. It smiled at people. It showed up to work on time, laughed at jokes, and lived a life that looked complete from the outside. Yet inside me, something always felt unfinished. There was a quiet space in my chest that never filled. No matter how busy I stayed, I surrounded myself with noise, with routine, with people, but the silence inside me remained. I didn't ache for attention. I didn't crave romance. I just felt unanchored, like I was moving through life, without ever fully arriving anywhere. Loneliness, I learned it, can exist even when life is full. That was when Ethan entered my world. Not loudly, not dramatically. He didn't change everything at once. He didn't demand space in my life or insist on being noticed. He arrived the way the most important things usually do, quietly, almost unnoticed, slipping into the cracks I didn't even realize were there. We met in the most ordinary way. No sparks, no overwhelming attraction, just a conversation that flowed without effort. He didn't impress me with stories or charm. He didn't try to be anything other than what he was, and somehow, that made me stay. At first, he felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. We talked about small things, work, daily routines, random thoughts that didn't seem important enough to remember later. But with him, even ordinary words felt lighter, as if they had somewhere safe to land. He listened, without waiting for his turn to speak. He paused before responding, like he wanted to understand, not just reply. Neither of us talked about our pasts right away. But loneliness has a way of recognizing itself in others. I noticed it in the pauses between his words, in the way his voice softened when conversation slowed. I noticed it in how comfortable he seemed with silence, not because he enjoyed being alone, but because he had learned how to live there. And maybe he noticed it in me too, in the way my shoulders relaxed when I was around him, in the way I stopped guarding every sentence. Being with Ethan didn't make my heart race. It made it rest. That's how I knew something was different. Over time, we started sharing more, and it all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, carefully, like two people testing how much truth the other could hold. Stories of disappointments we laughed off, dreams we had completely abandoned, moments when life had forced us to grow strong in places that should have been gentle. One evening, we sat together in silence, watching the city lights glow softly outside. Cars passed, windows lit up and went dark. Life moved forward, unaware of the quiet moment unfolding between us. "This feels peaceful," he said. "Yes," I replied, "like nothing is expected of us here." He smiled gently. "I think that's rare." That moment stayed with me, because peace was something I hadn't felt in a long time. As days passed, his presence became a comfort I didn't question. I didn't overthink why my breathing felt steadier when he was near. I didn't ask myself why my worry seemed quieter around him. I didn't analyze the way my thoughts slowed, the way I stopped bracing myself for disappointment. I just let it happen. But love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides inside safety. I realized how deeply he mattered to me on a day that should have meant nothing. A day when I expected him to be there and he wasn't. Hours passed without a message, no explanation, no familiar calm. The unease that crept into me surprised me. It wasn't panic. It wasn't jealousy. It was loss. That's when it hit me. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid of losing this. When he finally reached out, apologizing, explaining, he felt relief wash over me so deeply it scared me. My chest loosened, my thoughts settled, and I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit before. Relief meant attachment. Attachment meant risk. That night, we talked longer than usual. Our voices softer, our words slower. "I don't feel alone when I'm with you," he said quietly, as if the truth had slipped out before he could stop it. My heart tightened. "Neither do I admitted. We didn't say more than that. We didn't need to. Some truths don't need to be explained, they just need to be shared. Later, lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something for the first time in my life. Home isn't always a place. Sometimes, it's a person. And without realizing it, two lonely hearts and mine were slowly finding their way there. But love that begins in comfort doesn't arrive without questions. And the biggest one waited quietly between us, hidden inside everything we hadn't yet said. What happens when home starts to feel like love? We had already found home in each other. The only question left was whether we were brave enough to stay. Once you realize someone feels like home, everything else becomes uncertain. Because home is not just comfort. Home is responsibility. Home is choosing someone even when fear tells you to protect yourself. After the night, we both admitted we didn't feel alone anymore. Something shifted between Ethan and me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious to anyone else, but we felt it. A careful awareness settled in, like we were subtly holding something fragile. We didn't rush into anything. If anything, we became more cautious. As if both of us understood that whatever this was, it mattered too much to handle recklessly. Our conversations grew deeper, less about the outside world, more about the inner one, less about what we did, more about how we felt. He told me about the nights he came home to an empty apartment, how silence had once felt heavy instead of peaceful. I told him how I had learned to rely only on myself, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. We weren't fixing each other. We were understanding each other. And there is a quiet kind of love in that. One evening, while walking slowly under soft streetlights, Ethan spoke in a voice that sounded thoughtful, almost vulnerable. "Do you know why being with you feels different?" he asked. I shook my head. "Because I don't feel like I have to be anything else," he said. "I don't feel like I'm performing life anymore." His words settled deep in my chest. That's when I understood home isn't where you hide from the world. It's where you finally stop pretending. But the closer we grew, the louder my doubts became. Fear doesn't disappear when love arrives. It just finds new ways to speak. I wondered what would happen if we crossed the invisible line between comfort and commitment. What if love changed the safety we had built? What if choosing each other meant risking everything we had found? One night, unable to keep the fear inside anymore, I spoke it aloud. "What if we ruin this?" I asked. Ethan stopped walking, turned toward me, looked at me with a seriousness that made my breath catch. "What if we don't?" he said quietly. "What if this is exactly where we're supposed to be?" Tears rose in my eyes, not from sadness, but from being seen. That night, for the first time, he reached for my hand without hesitation. His grip wasn't tight, it wasn't uncertain. It was steady. And I didn't pull away. That touch didn't feel like a beginning, it felt like recognition. From then on, love revealed itself gently, in morning messages that didn't demand attention, only presence, in long conversations where silence carried as much meaning as words, in knowing someone was thinking of you without needing proof. We didn't fall in love loudly. We settled into it. One quiet evening, sitting beside him, my head resting lightly against his shoulder, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because nothing could hurt, maybe because if it did, I wouldn't face it alone. "Jessica," he said softly, almost afraid to disturb the moment, "loving you feels like coming home after a long time away." I closed my eyes, letting the truth of that settle into me. "I feel the same," I whispered. There were no dramatic confessions, no promises spoken into the night. Just two lonely hearts finally understanding that what they had been searching for wasn't missing anymore. Love didn't erase our loneliness overnight, but it gave it meaning. And in choosing each other, not perfectly, not fearlessly, but honestly, we turned loneliness into belonging. Because sometimes love doesn't change your life all at once. Sometimes, it simply gives your heart a place to rest. And that's how the lonely hearts didn't just find love. They found home.